So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're actually speaking to the power of breath. Since we have these 20-minute intervals, it's not enough for the full deep dive, but we're going into the theory and the principles of breath, and we'll end with a little breath practice. So I'm actually really glad I followed the lovely doctor, because her message was about living fully now. Living fully now. And what does that really mean and look like? So many of us become entrained in patterns and responses and conditioned habitual programs over our lives when it's not actually our full truth, our authentic self, our fully expressed embodiment. And we're going to talk about how the power of breath allows us to reawaken and reinvigorate the true self, the self which lives beyond the conditioning, beyond the illusion, beyond the falsity and the constructs and the pretenses and the facades. But not to get ahead of myself, we're going to start at the beginning. What is breath? What is breath? Breath is life. Breath is life force. What else? Movement. What else? Beautiful, yes. So to the ancients, breath was very much understood or understood to be spirit. And in many ancient languages, the word breath and the word spirit were synonymous, meaning the same word. The Latin word spiritus, the Hebrew word ruach, the Old Norse word and. There's many, many words and many languages that speak to breath as spirit. And what is the very first thing we do when we're born into the world? We take our first breath of life. And the deeper spiritual implication of that is that it's actually the spirit coming into the body. And what's the very last thing we do when we die? We take our final breath, which is the spirit leaving the body. Working with this deeper understanding means that breath is spirit, and we can work with our breath to access the spiritual dimensions of ourself while we are alive and breathing. On a physical level, to breathe fully and completely is to be here now, is to be present, rooted, anchored, grounded in our bodies, to feel safe and planted as we move through the world. And many of us, through our early experiences, learn to shut down the breath very early on. To shut down the breath is to shut down feeling. It's to shut down our emotionality. It's to shut down the full spectrum of what it means to be alive as a human. And so to start working with our breath consciously, first and foremost, is to self-regulate. Is to feel safe and at home in our bodies. Is to feel anchored. Is to feel here and planted. It's to reinvigorate and revitalize our organs, our cells, our living systems. On a physical level, to breathe fully and consciously and completely means that we're generating life force, and it's moving through the body. It's circulating, it's animating, it's enlivening. But as we move beyond that, to work with conscious breath, particularly the breath I teach, which is a format of breath that actually brings us out of the conscious mind and into the subconscious mind, into the limbic brain. And what it means when we work with this kind of breath is actually to meet the full spectrum of our emotional body. There is a lot of spiritual rhetoric out there that teaches us to only focus on what feels good, or what feels positive, or what feels comfortable. But to be a whole and total being is to be radically present to what is, as it is. To be fully intimate with our emotional body, which means meeting both the beauty, the joy, the ecstasy, as much as the grief, the sorrow, the hurt, the pain. And so the breath allows us to feel without story. without division, without warring against ourselves and creating narratives around reoccurring emotions. When we simply give ourselves permission to feel, we meet what we have been avoiding. We meet what we've been running from. We create something called radical self-intimacy. And in our culture, we have been systematically programmed to avoid what hurts, to avoid the pain, to avoid the grief. That's not positive. That's not spiritual. That's not comfortable. And sometimes we end up operating in these neat little bow-tied packages of love and light. Love and light are beautiful qualities, but it's not the full spectrum of the human experience. Thank you. To breathe fully is to allow all parts of us forth. It's to invite in that self-acceptance, that intimacy with what is as it is, that willingness to be a participant in our story, in our journey, in our unfoldment, to stop creating that internal division, that schism, that bifurcation that we create when we reject parts of ourselves that are uncomfortable. It allows us to stop that inner battle. And the beautiful thing about our emotions, when we simply allow ourselves to be fully present and breathe into what is, the incredible thing is that it moves, it expresses, it sounds, it transforms. This is what the breath gifts us when we continue to breathe into parts that have been disassociated, that have been repressed, that have been traumatized, that have been shut down, that have been frozen and fragmented in time. It allows us to retrieve these parts of ourselves and return them to our wholeness. Something I love to say is that our wholeness does not discriminate, so why do we? What would it feel like to fully accept and love ourselves in all textures, in all expressions, in all emotions, in all parts, in all versions? And the breath allows us this, because with the breath, there is nowhere to go but right here. There is nowhere to run. It invites that full spectrum communion with our totality. Beyond the emotions, the power of the breath is that it allows us to get out of the monkey mind. How many of us notice when we're entrained in that monkey mind, that analytical mind, the one that's talking and chattering and analyzing and thinking and often playing things out on loops? Our monkey mind, or also known as the beta brain wave, the analytical mind, can be very loud. And so the beauty of breath, especially working with a conscious breath pattern through breathwork journeying, through breathwork experiencing, is that it allows us to access higher states of consciousness. Someone recently mentioned the superconsciousness. Well, I'll say it starts with a theta brainwave. It starts with allowing us to access a brainwave state where memories and emotions are stored. If you like scientific terminology, it's the limbic brain. And so it allows us to access repressed content. It allows us to access trauma. It allows us to access imprints that have been coded epigenetically. How many of you are aware that trauma lives in the body? Beautiful. And so we can talk through things all day long, but unless we have a somatic practice that's allowing us to go into these spaces of ourselves where trauma is living, where imprints are living, where stress is living, where dysregulation is living, then we can't actually clear it out of the body. And so the beauty of conscious breath work is that it allows us to access a bird's eye clarity, a higher clarity. How many of you know the term gnosis, direct embodied knowing? So when we work with our breath, we can come into deeper knowing. We can access that wise one within, the one who knows, the one who sees, the one who has the answers. When we get stuck in those loops of habitual thought, it often removes us from our deeper knowing, from our intuition, from our wisdom, from the codes in our body. Our body is always communicating information with us. It's just sometimes our mind talks us out of it. And lastly, on a spiritual energetic plane, when we work with the breath, we're able, as I mentioned in the beginning of this talk, to access the spiritual dimensions of our being. If we ever forget our way, if we get a little too stuck in the human story, the thoughts start churning, we're in the monkey mind, we're in doubt, we're in fear, we're in uncertainty, we always have the ability to come back to our breath, to reconnect with who we are in the deepest levels, to come back to our spiritual essence, the truth of who we are. And so when we put this all together, breath becomes this revolutionary pathway to reawaken our true, authentic expression. Because we learned a little while ago that we move through experiences in our lives where we start to shut down certain parts of us, whether it's through trauma, whether it's through difficult experiences, whether it's through pieces in our lives that create unsafety. And so we shut things down. We don't just shut down our feelings, but often as children, we can learn how to shut down joy, how to shut down creativity, to shut down these higher octaves of our expression because we maybe weren't raised in a soul supportive environment that nurtured these parts of us. So when we work with the breath, we get to reawaken our full spectrum expression, our fully expressed embodiment. And I have seen story after story, miracle after miracle of people not only coming home to themselves, but reawakening to these parts of them that had been repressed for so long. And many women, it can be a journey of coming home to their bodies, to their pleasure, to their sensuality, to their creativity, to the aliveness of that Shakti life force that wants to move and express through the world, for example. It could be people reclaiming their voice, their power, their sovereignty, their magnitude. It's an opportunity to bring back online different parts of us that have not been in their expression. And the more we work with the power of the breath, the more we come back into that authentic embodiment. And the last piece is that when we clear the pathways, I call it the psycho-emotional debris. When we clear those blockages, those distortions, those imbalances that are living within us that aren't true to us, we create more space. We create new capacity for new life. I look at it as the fertile soil that we need for new life. So the more we move things out, the more we clear the pathways, the more we make new space for new textures that want to move through, and we get to reawaken and come home to the truth of who we are. Time check? Okay. I thought I saw a 1 minute, I wasn't sure. So with that, I want to demonstrate a practice to everyone that they can work with 5 to 10 minutes a day to really start to awaken the power of their own breath. And also learn a tool that they can come to in any moments they're feeling unsure, they're feeling that doubt or that hesitation or that lack of clarity. And the power of this practice is that not only is it a diaphragmatic breath, which activates the vagus nerve, which is literally the mind-body connection. So this is the ventral vagal pathway, if you know polyvagal theory. Also, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Who knows about the nervous system responses? So many people move through the world in that low-grade stress response, that baseline of fight and flight. And we live in a culture of highly dysregulated individuals who are not regularly accessing parasympathetic, which is rest and restore, rest and digest. It's that part of our nervous system that allows us to unwind, to really uncoil, to really allow the body to open and relax and surrender. So the breath I want to show everyone is a diaphragmatic breath, and it's a parasympathetic inducing breath, which means it's inviting your body to relax and open. And this is a breath you can do in the beginning of your morning practice. You can do at any point throughout the day. And you can also journey with as well. Everyone's going to be gifted after this talk a free breathwork journey with our breathwork school, which is called Sacred Breath Academy. So if you want to take a longer experiential and shamanic journey, we're gifting this to everyone. But for now, let's start with a simple breath. So I invite everyone to just get a sense on where their stomach is and where their chest is. And go ahead and put one hand over the belly or the stomach and one hand over the chest. And just connect those centers. And the diaphragm is the bridge between these centers. So I first invite everyone to take in a deep breath in through the nose. First, filling up the belly, moving it into the chest, and then exhaling through the mouth. So it will look like this. Belly, chest, exhale, feeling that circuitry in through the nose, out through the mouth. Belly, chest, exhale, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And this is a beautiful cycle of breath. You can continue to engage here for a few more moments. But this is a beautiful cycle of breath that activates that calming response in the body. So it's literally sending the signals of safety, of ease, of relaxation, letting your body know it can rest, it can receive, it can open. Activating the vagus nerve, that mind-body connection. And breathing from belly to chest is a natural breath. If you ever watch the way a newborn or a toddler breathes, it's the same kind of wave breath, this beautiful diaphragmatic pathway. Feeling how good it feels to send those signals into your body. And knowing that this is a breath you can draw upon in any moment you lose your way, in any moment you forget, in any moment you get stuck, in any moment you lose connection to self, to body, to your being. You can always come home to your breath. Your breath is that sacred technology, that inner technology that lives right under your nose, pun intended. It is completely free, completely accessible, completely available. It is your direct connection to the soul, to the spirit, to the truth and the wisdom that lives within you. Our bodies are infinitely intelligent. As we sit here in each moment, our bodies are performing trillions of functions without even having to ask. And when we get stuck in the mind, it often maroons us from that deeper wisdom that lives within. So the more we reorient to truth, to breath, to connection, to this circuitry of feeling at home and rooted and anchored in ourselves, the more we reorient to our true north, our true compass as we move about the world. We don't have to seek answers externally in the same way because we can draw upon the wisdom that lives within. We can draw upon our own wise one, our own compass, and things will become more and more clear the more we reconnect to our center. So if you're still breathing, just closing out some final cycles, sealing that beautiful circuitry of mind, body, spirit connection, and remembering this practice. Your breath is always here for you. It is ever available. It is that which tethers us to ourselves, to our knowing. to our truth. And the beautiful thing is that we get to start or continue to, if you already are, we get to refine it, move through the world in this connection piece. We get to pay attention to how things feel in our body. Is this a yes or is this a no? Do I feel expansive or do I feel disconnected? Does this experience feel affirming and uplifting? Or does it feel potentially dysregulating or misaligned? And we get to continuously have these check-ins, moment to moment to moment to moment. And so I want to invite you, and maybe a lot of you have a breath practice already, and that's amazing. It can only deepen. But if you don't, I want to invite you to take this practice with you. I want to invite you to begin each morning with that self-connection, with that centeredness, with that groundedness, with that regulation point. Establishing that safety in the body. Safety leads. If we don't feel safe in our bodies, we're not going to get very far. So how can we begin our day in that rooted, connected, anchored place? How can we start feeling at home, present, embodied, and let everything build from there? So I would love for you to take this practice with you and start your morning with this breath. And at any point in the day, if you need that reorientation back to your center, you can always pause and breathe. You can take a few minutes to engage this breath, to come back to the breath, to come back to yourself, and to breathe in questions, to breathe in decisions, to breathe in your actions, to pause and say, how does this feel? Can I breathe into this? Can I feel how it feels first? And can I live from that center, that compass of knowing? And if you feel called to go deeper, what we offer, and this is what everyone is going to be gifted with, but if you feel called to go deeper, we are gifting everyone with a full breathwork journey with our academy. And that is a deeper dive breathwork, working with conscious connected breath. And the opportunity for anyone who hasn't experienced this is to invite full body catharsis. So deep, deep, deep emotional release, deep cellular healing, and an opportunity to connect with our spiritual nature. So people may have visions, they may connect with ancestors, they may be given messages from source or from the universe or from God, and really reorient to that higher wisdom. And this form of breathwork does release a small amount of DMT in the lungs and in the pineal gland. So many people say it feels like a medicine journey, but there are no substances required. It is just you and your breath. So who would like to potentially go deeper with us? Beautiful. So we are going to offer a gift for you here right after I close, and we would love to take you on a deep journey together. And I know we are coming up on time here. So to close this out, I invite everyone to really start to pay attention to their breath beyond this practice and take note. Am I a nose breather or am I a mouth breather? Some people may be breathing through the nose in the day-to-day, and then when they go to sleep, they may become a mouth breather. So really pay attention to how you're breathing, because mouth breathing has been linked to a wealth of health imbalances and all kinds of things, from snoring to sleep apnea to crooked archways to bronchial issues. There's a long, long list. There's a great book called Breath by James Nestor if you want to go deeper into that. So paying attention, am I a mouth breather? Am I a nose breather? And if you are a mouth breather, could you start to reorient to the nose? Could you start to take that correct breath? And beyond that, pay attention to if you're breathing more shallowly into your chest, or if you're breathing more diaphragmatically into the stomach. So we want to start taking those full breaths, those deep breaths, those complete breaths, those nose breaths, because breath is life. And most dis-ease has been traced to inefficient oxygen at the cellular level. There have been study after study after study that works with people who suffered from a host of different things, where when their breath was simply corrected, the ailment started to heal. And so breath is linked to well-being on every single level, with every single system of the body, every organ, every molecule. So just paying attention, how is my breath? Am I expansive? Am I open? Am I feeling? Am I breathing? Or in this moment, am I closed down? Am I contracted? Am I disconnected? And in the moments you feel disconnected or charged or contracted, you can always come back to your breath. Ask yourself, how is my breath in this moment? And know that you can always breathe your way home. Thank you.